But I want to thank both is here, Mr. Bruce Jaffe and Mr. Gary Lindstrom, for coming to the forum tonight. The way that this evening will be structured is we'll give each candidate 3 minutes to open with a speech. Did I say something?
No, she was asking are the other two candidates coming or should we wait? I told you said they're coming.
Bruce Jaffe said he doesn't think they'll make it. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes for their opening speech, and then we'll begin with some prepared questions that have been submitted and given to all candidates in advance. And I want to stress that all 4 candidates have been invited, and I have provided all of them with the prepared questions in advance submitted by the Sierra Club and the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer each question as it is presented. And then when we're finished, there are a total of 5 questions on that. And then we'll open it up to your questions. And at the end of the evening, at about 10 minutes till 8 o'clock, we'll close and give each candidate 2 minutes to give their closing speech. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much. With that, I would like to, I'm going to alternate between the 2 of you, if that's all right. Dr. Jaffe, why don't you go first with your opening speech? 3 minutes, please, for the timer. Mr. Ron Pomerantz is our timer tonight.
All right, thanks to the Sierra Club and thank you to, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom for giving us this opportunity to exchange information, for people to get to know the candidates better. Carla Christensen and Rochelle Lather were not able to make it tonight. They send their apologies, but I'm going to take a little bit of my time to tell you a bit about them. Carla Christensen was voted in onto the board 4 years ago. And I have not seen any director in my time, and I've been on the Soquel Creek Water District for 15 years now, going on 16, take on the job of being a director with more enthusiasm, with more dedication, and with more soul than Carla Christensen. When she came on to the board, she made a point to talk with every manager in the district, water district, to learn the operation of the district, and constantly talks with the general manager to make sure she's up to speed on things. Rochelle Lather worked for the county for a number of years in sanitation. She's an engineer, technically oriented, environmentalist, and has been politically active all her life. She brings to the board a perspective that is very much needed, where she has experience with sanitation engineering and at the same time is environmental. Myself, thank you. Myself, I'm really the reason I'm on this board is because I want to see this community have water that's clean, safe, and as plentiful as possible into the future, sustainable in the future. My background is I've got a master's in oceanography, a PhD in earth sciences. I work as a professional in earth sciences, and my heart is motivated by, not motivated, my heart is really just wanting for my kids and my family and the community to have water into the future. So that's my 15 seconds. And that's all I'm about. I'm open to all possibilities to meet that goal. That's all I'm there.
Thank you very much. And I forgot to alert the candidates that our wonderful timer, Ron Pomerantz, will also be giving you warnings for 1 minute left, 30 seconds left, and when your time's up. So thank you. Mr. Lindstrom, please, go ahead.
Hi, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Gary Lindstrom. I've been a resident of Aptos for over 50 years. I finished grammar school here, junior high, high school, Cabrillo, and went on to other colleges through my travels and stuff. The reason I'm running for a director's seat is because I got involved with the Aptos Village project. And through that, there was a lot of water issues. And the more I dug into them, the more interested I became in the water district. And seeing that water is such an important thing to our lives, we all need water, food, and air to breathe. And so I was a little upset as to some of the operations of the district. And every time we had an issue that came up, it was usually dealt with a very nonchalant, okay, well, we'll figure that out, or go to the office and get the answer. And then they started charging us $110 every time we wanted to get some information. We were supposed to be paying for the person's time that was looking it up. So we paid the money, and I just really got upset about the negativity with ratepayers. They have so many questions and problems and things, and I'm a retired businessman, and in business, the customer comes first. And especially with this company, it is owned by the ratepayers. And I just think that they should be listened to and be more involved. If I get on the board, I want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm an open channel. I would like to, on Saturdays, after the meetings on Tuesdays, just have a casual meeting at a roasting company or something where we can sit down and talk about your problems, about what went on at the board meeting, who voted for what's coming up, how much money was spent, all the things that we really know very little about. So it's just, I come with a different perspective. I'm not a scientist. I have a great deal of common sense. And my first thought was, when I heard about our problem, was, why aren't we transferring water from Santa Cruz? They have the water, they have no place to store it. We have the storage, but we don't have the water. It's a no-brainer. So anyway, that's the reason I'm running, and that's who I am.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now begin with the prepared questions that have been submitted first by the Santa Cruz chapter of the Sierra Club. The first question, and I'll direct it first to Mr. Lindstrom. Soquel Creek Water District appears to be fast-tracking the Pure Water Soquel project without waiting to test the groundwater replenishment impacts of the water transfer pilot project due to begin this winter. What is your position on this and why?
Well, the whole process of getting us to this transfer program has been drawn out much longer than it's needed to be. We had some testing that had to be done. A lot of it was done last June. Santa Cruz moved ahead and did what they needed to do and met the date that they had potentially set, which was November 1st. And I think that all the testing that we have to do is necessary. I have no problems with that. And I just think it should be done on a little bit faster pace. This is a critical issue. We do have saltwater intrusion problems. We do have wells that have been shut down. But the thing is that we need to move at a faster pace. I don't think that the testing period needs to be drawn out like they want to have it. We need to go through a full season. We've done all the models and things that we need to do for drought situations and everything. We went back to, I think it was the late 1800s, if I remember exactly. And when I say we, I'm talking about the Water for Santa Cruz County group. And if you go to the website, you'll see a lot of the things that have been done, and that every aspect of this transfer has been looked at and has been checked. And so now it's just time to let the water start rolling and increase the volume as much as possible, as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. I don't even know if I have to do this anymore, Ron, because you're doing so good.
Yes, doing a good job.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank the Sierra Club for participating in this. I want to thank them for endorsing me last election. Sorry, things kind of got screwed up with the timing, so there's no opportunity to endorse any of the candidates for this election. Before answering this, just want to kind of a little background here. I do agree that seawater intrusion is something that has to be taken seriously, and we have to act quickly to either reduce our water demand or increase our supply. And since I've been on the board, the water demand has decreased by about a third, a little bit over a third, between a third and a half. And that's because of aggressive conservation. And I fully support continuing aggressive conservation. I want to thank all the customers who are taking this seriously and have done that. So, and I'll get a bit more into how we know that the seawater is just offshore. But in terms of fast tracking pure water Soquel, there's a process, a public process, community water plan, and the feedback that we got was fast track everything, act quickly. And in terms of taking a long time for the water transfer to happen, it has. But you all remember, I've got a minute, Ron.
It's 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Well, then I'll finish up. Anyway, Flint, Michigan, that could have happened when we got water from Santa Cruz because of different chemistry. So the bottom line is that I want people to be safe with their water, and whatever it takes a little longer. The river transfer is scheduled to begin at the end of November.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I just want to repeat that for the questions to answer, just to make it, help it move quickly and to make sure there's plenty of time for the audience, we've set it at 2 minutes for answering all questions.
Okay.
Sorry.
It was 3 minutes in what you sent out,
What I sent out, I said 2 to 3 minutes, and we reviewed it, so we decided to reduce
okay,
it to 2.
that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Not knowing how many candidates there would be.
I want to hear what people have to ask anyway.
Yeah.
What I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. The second prepared question from the Sierra Club is this. As a district board member, how would you work with Santa Cruz City Water Department staff to accelerate infrastructure improvements and water transfer agreements, as well as addressing efforts for water rights amendments and environmental requirements that could help maximize future water transfers? We go first this time to Dr. Jackie. 2 minutes.
It's Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you.
So working with Santa Cruz, there's a Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that was passed a couple of years ago that requires all groundwater basins in the state to become sustainable. First, to develop a plan, and since we're a critically overdrafted basin, we have 2 years to do that, 2020, and then 20 years after that point to become sustainable. Santa Cruz is there, county is there, Central Water District, John Kennedy is a private well pumper who's on the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. So we're doing that. In terms of what would I do? Everything I could. Because again, my goal is to get the basin sustainable. It's to have it be sustainable in the future, even with climate change, with increased temperatures, with storms that are more intense, with less recharge coming from that, so everything. And I talked with Rosemary Menard, and she told me that actually last week there is a notice of preparation for an EIR on opening up the water rights for San Lorenzo River. November 7th, there'll be a meeting in the city of Santa Cruz on that. So things are progressing along those ways. And regional problem, regional solution. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lindstrom, please.
Yes. Well, again, I go back to the transfer system. It's something that could have been done 5, 6, 7 years ago. Why it wasn't, I have no idea. We were into the drought. We were in a drought back in 76 and 7 or 77, 78. I forget exactly the years. But I don't know why it wasn't done back then. But it surely should have been done as soon as we started a drought situation. We should have been looking at this very thing right now. I want to try to keep the rates down for the ratepayers, and by doing this transfer, it is much less expensive than it is to reuse the sewage and produce a water that we have to put into the aquifer that right now it can't be served up as drinking water. So I have a feeling that putting it in the aquifer, it's just going to be, there's a potential for a problem. We don't know what the chemical reaction is going to be once that water gets in there. And if we destroy that aquifer, then we're really in trouble. So I would rather see us get this water going. If in the future we get into a critical state of drought, and severe, then I say let's go for other means of producing water. But right now it's just not necessary, and we don't need to be spending between $100 and $200 million producing water that we can't really drink. That's where I stand on the issue.
All right, thank you very much. The third and final question prepared by the Sierra Club is this, and we'll start with Mr. Lindstrom. The Pure Water Soquel project draft EIR did not consider water transfers as an alternative. The same EIR, however, reported that water recharge was happening at faster rates than anticipated. What are your thoughts on this part of the EIR, and how do you interpret the potential impacts of water transfers on groundwater recharge? 2 minutes, please.
Well, I was upset with the EIR because they didn't say anything about the possibility of transferring the water. It made it sound like the sewage processing was the only way to do it, and that isn't the truth. The truth is that the transfer has been available for years. Nobody looked into it. Why? I don't know. I really don't know, because when I found out that we were in such a critical state, the first thing that came to my mind is why aren't we transferring that water from Santa Cruz? I know that there's like 8 million gallons a day that goes into the ocean that's usable and treatable. So again, it's a no-brainer. I just want to see this thing fast-tracked, and I don't want to see the carbon footprint that the plant would produce. It's a huge user of energy, and the transfer system, the infrastructure's already in, the pipes have been tested, there's no Flint, Michigan, and it's ready to go. You know, if we had started this earlier, we'd already be 5 years into this. So I just really want to see what we can do at the best price and at the safe, and have the safest water.
Thank you. Bruce.
Okay, so fact-based discussion. This is chapter 7, page 5, 7-5. This is online. You can look at it yourself from the draft environmental impact report. Analysis of CEQA alternatives. Alternative 1, no project. Alternative 2, reduce project with treated surface water purchase, which is river transfer. Alternative 3, seawater brackish desalination plant. So it was considered. Now, it wasn't considered as a sole source, and the reason of that is it's illegal to do that because there are not water, at the time this was prepared, and as of this moment, there are not water rights that allow San Lorenzo River to go to other places. So it is in fact in the EIR. So the second part of the question is about the recharge happening at a faster rate than anticipated. Yeah, that's been found out, and the modeling verifies that. And the modeling also shows that the groundwater basin is leaky. And so not only does it recover quicker, but it also loses its water quicker. And so, double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. And in the future, with climate scientists talking about longer and more severe droughts, those times when it's leaking the water is very dangerous because there could be seawater intrusion coming in. We need to keep the water levels up at the coast to push back against the seawater. It's as simple as that.
Thank you. That concludes the prepared questions by the Sierra Club. I'd now like to read the two, we have two questions prepared by the Women's International League of Peace and Freedom. And this one I will direct to Bruce. The first one is, for 2 minutes, if, as we have found out, you accept the figures for the much more water available from North Coast streams than the pilot project for water transfers is using, how and when will you get ready to accept more water? Santa Cruz City says they're ready for that. Are you? Bruce, please, 2 minutes.
Okay, so the limitation on water transfers, and first of all, Santa Cruz is ready, but I've got here the agreement, and people can read it afterwards, about between Santa Cruz and Soquel Creek Water District for the pilot transfer. It's about 1,000 million gallons in a year, which is not anywhere near what we're being told is necessary to get the groundwater levels up. But there's many, many conditions on it, and this pilot ends in 2020. So that having been said, we are able to do roughly half a million, excuse me, I'm getting my conversions wrong, 5 million gallons a day of transfer. That's what the infrastructure will hold. And I'm totally open to doing whatever it takes if the river water is available to get that water to Soquel Creek Water District. But if that water comes here, let's say we do get agreement from the city that we're going to be able to do, instead of 1,000 million gallons in a year, let's say we're able to do 5,000 million gallons in a year, so 5 billion gallons. That's not going to come without an expectation from Santa Cruz that water goes back the other way. And so we have to take that into account. We have to see, again, the sole purpose here is to preserve the aquifer for our children and grandchildren. And so we have to look at that and see whether the solution will work in the face of climate change.
Thank you. Mr. Lindstrom, please.
Yes, well, with the river transfer, again, I think the 2-year period's a little bit too long. I think we can fast track it a little bit quicker. I'm not a water scientist or anything, but I'm sure that there's some things we can do to speed it up so that we can increase the volume. We can double the volume of the water by simply enlarging the pipes. The pipes will cost us about $50 million, $60 million, compared to 100 to 200 million for the other plan. And it's doable within a year's time. So the fact that we can take more water if they have it is great. If we get into the aquifer system, which is another way of adding on to the transfer system, Right now, up at Loch Lomond, there is a 500 million gallon, well, just a little under 500 million gallons of water that could be transferred right now. But we're just not ready for it. So we just need to get the infrastructure set up so that this water can be shared between us. It's time for all of us to stop fighting with one another. I talked to John Laird and asked him if we could go up to Sacramento and talk to the people up there and get a temporary open-ended permit to allow us to do any of the transferring that we feel is necessary. That way, the state can take their 12, 15 years that they've been working on this, they can take all the time they want because it gives us an open-ended permit to do what we need to do. And a few of us in our group have decided that we're going to go on up and find out who we need to be talking to get this done. Because John Laird seemed to think that there was a definite possibility that we could do that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the last of the prepared questions, and I'll direct this one first to Mr. Lindstrom. If you were elected, would you be willing to have an inclusion in your next Soquel Creek Water District newsletter for customers to be able to prepare estimated costs for the Pure Water Soquel project and river water transfers? If so, could Water for Santa Cruz's figures be included to help with those estimates?
Absolutely. I think everything, all the cards should be put on the table. Because once you can match the figures and the amount of water that can be transferred, again, I go back to it, it's a no-brainer. We don't need to be spending that absurd amount of money that is going to leave us with really high water rates for years to come just to pay it. So our kids will be paying it, or grandkids. The financing is expensive on a project that big. The interest rates are already going up. So it just doesn't make sense to do it right now. If we have the water and we can transfer it. But just put everything out on the table, because every time I hear that they're telling people that the project's going to cost $90 million. Well, that was the lowest end of the first estimate, which went up into the $90 to $130 million. Then it went up to $180 million, and now people are talking about over $200 million because of the interest rates alone. So I just think that we need to really sit down and think about this and not to put the burden on the ratepayers for paying this project that we really don't need at this time. And as far as sharing and stuff, I talked to the people over at Central Water District. They don't have a lot of water that they can share with us, but they do have some. And I think we should be taking that into consideration and using it. If we save a gallon and fill a gallon, then we're doing two things at once, and we'll get that aquifer filled much quicker. But again, it gets down to ratepayers need to be a part of this project. They need to be able to vote on it, which has been taken away from us now. So it's up to the ratepayers to insist that we vote on it if we're going to pay for it.
Thank you very much. Bruce, 2 minutes, please.
I didn't know we were talking about finances now. But to answer the question about outreach, so there's so much going on at the Soquel Creek Water District. We have to be careful that we don't burn out the staff, but also there's not enough time to really do everything in a meeting. We have meetings twice a month. So there is a public outreach committee that has, an outreach committee that has public members. Those are open meetings. Everyone is invited to come to those. And this is the type of thing that's discussed at those meetings, what should be in the newsletter. In terms of the specifics of comparing estimated costs, as long as those costs were accurate, I would totally support that. What I've seen so far hasn't taken into account all the costs, so it's a low estimate. And since we're talking money now, this project that Gary's right, 90 million is kind of the middle point, And I'm not going to fool myself to think that, I don't know very many projects that come in under what the amount that's first, proposed. But with financing and a 30-year, and this is really key, the 30 years that we can get financing for because we're so solvent comes down to about 25 cents a quarter a day per person in the district. And that's at today's rates. So what's a quarter mean 30 years from now? Maybe a dime. I'd be willing to pay that if necessary. Not necessary. If river water transfers do the trick, if Santa Cruz says, yes, we want to give you this water, I'm all for that too. I don't want to pay more for my water. I don't want people to pay more for their water. But we need the water to be reliable into the future.
All right, thank you very much. I have one card with a question that's been presented. Are there any other cards that people would like to submit with questions? I'll collect them now, and then what I'll do is alternate. You can raise your hand if you have a question you want to present. Just stand up in person, and I'll alternate. Are there any other questions? Cards coming in? Great, thank you. Thank you. All right. I'll go with the first card. I'm going to just read them in the order that I've received them. But I want to ask if anybody wants to stand up and ask a question, and I'll go from there. Does anybody want to stand up and ask a question? All right, thank you. I'll go with the first question card that I was presented by a member of the audience. And let's see, I think we are going to go first to Bruce, because we started with Gary last time. Recharge system. How does the system plan to filter out the byproducts from chemotherapy, vaccines, and drugs, both prescription and over-the-counter? The drugs will secrete from the urine in the sewer water. So I think this is a question about byproducts in the Pure Water Soquel project.
Right, that's what they're not talking about. So how much time do I have to answer? 2 minutes? Or more, or what's the?
It's only 6:30, so.
Yeah, let's give you 3 minutes,
3 minutes,
okay?
all right.
Mr. Timer, is 3 minutes okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. 3 minutes, because we want to take time to answer your questions.
So
3 minutes.
first of all, there are byproducts from all these things that go into septic systems and go into our groundwater basin right now. However, what's nice about groundwater is that as it travels through the system, microbes work on it and it cleans it up. Okay, so that's the tail end of what's being proposed for pure source Soquel. I don't like that name. Nothing's entirely pure. At the front end, and I take this very seriously. Again, I have a family who lives here, friends who live here. I've been in the 35 years in this area. Don't want anything that's not safe in our water. We took a trip down to Orange County Water District, and the poor vice president in charge of all this water quality and whatnot he started telling us about what the system was like and how they did it. And it was the tour for people who aren't really water people. We stopped them within minutes. Dr. Bruce Daniels was there. And the poor guy, an hour and a half later, was like, oh my God. But he answered all the questions. He was a very straight shooter. So here's the deal. And we also had a national panel with professors from University of Arizona, UC Berkeley, US EPA, experts evaluate reports that have been done and tell us, whether things were safe. So here's the process. You filter it out, the sludge and things, and then when you get to a point where it's clean enough, you do reverse osmosis. So reverse osmosis is the same thing that's being used for desalination. It gets out salt. So the filters will get out anything, okay, 1 minute, I'm gonna have to go quick, that it'll get out anything that has a molecular weight of greater than 200. That's everything that was in that list, molecular weight greater than 200. What gets through the system then gets treated additionally with ultraviolet to clean it up more, and it's oxidized, and what comes out is there's no minerals, and it has to actually, minerals have to be added back in, goes into the recharge, and then gets further cleaned up by the microbes that are in there. I've drank the water. I was satisfied with Orange County Water District, and then I'm distrustful of Southern California. But I think it's safe. It's expensive. Gary's right. If we don't have to go to it, why go to it? And energy, Gary brought up the carbon footprint. It'd be all carbon neutral energy source.
Thank you. Mr. Lexington, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Yeah, as Bruce talked about the process and everything, that's fine. But again, it's man-made. We've got Mother Nature's natural water that we can clean up and transfer and use. Why go through the expense and the process that may endanger somebody's life? Okay, the water district has not been made God, and I just don't think, I'm not trying to scare people, but there are people that do have problems with residual chemicals and things. Their bodies are just ultra sensitive to it. And I just don't think at this time that Mother Nature should be asked to do something else again for mistakes that we've made. The water has been overused. It hasn't been managed properly. And I just want to see the ratepayers and the well owners be able to get involved with this company. It is your company. And it's just time to stop all this nonsense and all this expansion, because the people that are really behind this pure water thing would be people like the developers. Because once they have that, then they say, well, we don't have any water problems. But then you're paying for them to be able to come in and turn this into South San Jose. So this whole water issue is very involved, and it goes in all different directions. So think carefully about it, and I just, again, if in the future we absolutely have to go to something like Pure Water, Soquel project, I have no problems with it, but people need to know what it's going to cost them. And it's going to cost them 10 times what it costs to transfer the water in building and in the cost of the water serving it up. So, like I said, I'm not a scientific genius or anything like that. I have a lot of common sense. I know what makes sense, and I know how to run a business. And there's just some things that are missing in this company where they're not relating to the people that are paying the bills, paying the salaries, and are drinking the water. So I just hope that everybody gets involved with this and starts understanding the issues that are really at hand here. And, we can manage this. Santa Cruz has done an incredible job. We set records on conserving water. And we can do this also. We can get through this water issue. And my time's up.
Thank you very much. There was a lady in the second row that raised her hand first as wanting to stand up and ask your question. Please go ahead.
I do. I have heard that we lose quite a bit of water due to leaks in the kind of aged piping infrastructure that we have. And do you know how much of that water is lost and how much could be recovered with repairs and what that would cost?
All right. I'd like to ask, I'm going to direct that first to Gary because it's your turn, and I'd like you to repeat the question for the audience and then answer it for 3 minutes.
Okay, she wanted to know about the leaky pipes and how we can take care of the problem. Well, there is natural leakage in pipes in all systems. And the report that was just done on our system was very good. We are not losing that much water. And of course, it's regular maintenance. It's just something that you have to watch. there's some new systems coming out that they're talking about, some of the new meters and things like that, that will also detect leaks at the service location. So there's all kinds of things we can do to detect the leaks and fix them as well as possible. And if pipes need to be replaced, they need to be replaced. It's just maintenance. So I hate to see us put money aside for this project and slack off of maintenance and keeping up our systems. Because I know right now that there's a few things that are being held back because of a cash flow sort of a situation. So I don't want to see that. I want to maintain the system that we have and expand the water that Mother Nature has given us, and just really respect the fact that we can get out of this, and everybody has done their share as far as conserving, but they can do more by understanding the two systems and knowing when it's time to do one or the other. And right now, the time is for transfers, and we should be putting 100% of our effort into that. That's it.
Thank you. Bruce?
Good questions.
With this, do you
Yeah.
want her to restate the question?
Does anyone want me to restate it? No, you can, yeah.
Thank you.
So, Gary's right. We're, on the bell curve of how much water we lose to leaks. We're at the more efficient end of things. But I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. You've been on the board for a while and you start losing track, but I think it was maybe 10 years ago or so. They dug up a redwood pipe and brought it into a meeting. I'm going, oh my God. That was in there for I don't know how long. But yeah, our system is aging. The finances are it's not a pretty picture because of that. Our fixed costs are something like 90% of our costs. And that's for a large part of that is the infrastructure, the pipes, replacing them, et cetera. And if you don't do that, you not only have the slow leaks that occur, but you have catastrophic leaks, and I'm sure you've all seen that happen where you drive by and it's gushing water and you go, oh my God, we're conserving, and that's happening. So that's not good. So no one's ever asked the total cost to upgrade the system. I think it's literally, I'd be very surprised if it was less than $500 million to replace everything. It might be. It might only be several $100 million, but I think it's closer to $500 million. It might be a lot more than that because we have a lot of pipe that's there and a lot that's old. So I'd like to say that the price of water is going to go down in the future, but it's not. Just because we have that aging system, and then you have these challenges. For 30 years, we pump more than. Here's a graph if they're going to see it later. But this is what we were pumping up and around, we think in terms of acre feet, which is 325,000 gallons. So I'll convert this to, we were pumping somewhere around 15 billion gallons back from 1984 to 2002 when I came on the board. And now we're literally pumping about not quite, we're a bit over half of that, so about thirds of that. So things have gone down, but because of all that, we've got problems with seawater coming on at different places in the district, and we need to keep the water levels up, and that's not cheap. Whether it's river water transfer, which is not as the estimates in this pilot agreement, it was so we could get information. So the price was, I think it was $1,000 per for 1,000 million gallons. It's going to be like 10 times that. This information is going to be coming out soon. It could be even 15 times that. So the river water transfer, if it does happen, is not going to be as cheap as this initial agreement.
Thank you. I'm going to now take a written question, and then I'll take a hand raiser, just so we alternate. This is from someone in the audience. I read the candidate statements, and all three incumbents stated that Pure Water Soquel would not produce water for growth, only help us keep the level of the aquifer at status quo. Isn't it true that we can obtain as much water via transfers as would be produced by recycled sewer water? So we'll go first to Bruce.
Okay. So there are two parts to that question. One is that all three of the incumbents say that this was not growth inducing. And I should remember my statement, but I don't remember it. But the intent of it is to recover the aquifer, okay? So the question is, the second part, and that's my intent. The second part is whether or not river water transfers can do that without going to water recycling. And the answer is we don't know. That's unfortunate, but the numbers that I've been presented with, and Scott's presented numbers on how much North Coast streams could give, and that's special water because it's pre-1914 water rights, so they don't have to do anything in terms of legal transfers. I mean, change of use, like San Lorenzo River would be. That certainly is not, that's about less than half, even if all that water from the North Coast was to come to us, and less than half of what's needed to keep the water levels up. And the thing that, so I'm politically liberal, but water I'm conservative, and so I want to make sure that 20 years from now, or with climate change, that there's enough water. And so far, I'm not convinced that river water can do that. And certainly you can't do it without change of use. And a big uncertainty is whether or not, what the water coming back, what the requirements from Santa Cruz are for water coming back, whether that can work. So I wish I had a more definitive answer, but I don't think, everything I've seen makes me suspect that there's enough just with river water, and with climate change especially. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Do you need the question restated?
Just a little, yeah.
Yes, let me restate it. I read the candidate statements, and all three incumbents stated that Pure Water Soquel would not produce water for growth, only help us keep the level of the aquifer at status quo. Isn't it true that we can obtain as much water via transfers as would be produced by recycled sewer water?
Okay. We don't know. The transfers haven't even been tried yet. So we need to get, like I said, 100% behind that and get the water flowing and see what we're capable of producing with it. And plus the recharging of the aquifer during the winter, we need to figure out how to get more water back into the aquifer, whether it be through perk ponds or whatever. There's just a lot that we can do. And with the people in the district getting involved and thinking about this all the time, every brain is like a computer. And with thousands of computers, we're going to come up with ideas to help recharge that aquifer faster. And the children are learning about the aquifer now and how it's recharged and where the water goes. Those kids are the next generations. They're the ones that need the water in the future. They'll be able to figure out some of this stuff. They're little geniuses just sitting there waiting for projects to do. The same thing with UCSC. This would be a perfect project for them to take on in their science programs. So I just think that the answers are out there. Exactly what we can get out of it, it's been put down on paper, but I'm very optimistic. And I think that the numbers are a little bit low. I've lived here all my life. Santa Cruz Mountains are like a rainforest, and we're almost considered a rainforest. So it's just we need to learn how to save that water when it's falling from the sky, and we need to learn how to move it around. And we need to all start working together rather than fighting with each other all the time. The water is necessary for all of us. There is nothing that goes on in this county anymore that doesn't affect the entire county. So with this water transfer and us getting this aquifer filled and the others, then if there is a drought situation again, we've got water. And we've got a system that can help replenish the water. So I just, again, I'll say, I am not totally against pure water. It's just not the right time for it. And I just think that our money would be better spent rebuilding the infrastructure, enlarging the pipes, going to the aquifer system, and really, really taking care of our water instead of fighting over it all the time. So that's where I go with that.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in the back had his hand raised last time, and would you please stand up and state your question, or that will be for Gary to take for 3 minutes.
I'm Scott Gilbreath. I live in Live Oak, in this district. Actually, I don't have a question. I have 2 suggestions. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. I'd like to hear them. I'd like to hear them. Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay. This conversation has been going on, and it's going to continue to go on. It's really very good that Gary has run for this position, because now we're having a public discussion again, and I appreciate however the election comes out that you guys are talking about the real issues. I went to the Soquel Creek Water District Board meeting last week. I think that was the 16th, and listened, and 2 things came out of that that I've been thinking about and want to pass on. Both of them came from Bruce Daniels. The first one was about this pilot project that we have a 5-year term to execute. And we have only got 2 years left of this 5 years. It took me a while, but eventually I realized that what we really should do is we should, Soquel Creek and Santa Cruz, simply sign an amendment to the agreement that says that the 5-year period hasn't begun yet. So we can take the pressure of we've only got 2 years before, as Bruce puts it, poof, it all goes away. So we can take the time pressure off and really go to work on this water transfer. Second thing that Bruce Daniels talked about that stuck in my memory, stuck in my mind, and I had to chew on it for a while, was the cost of this water. I think what you said, Bruce, was that we've got a price in this pilot agreement that is twice what we presently pay for water. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So since the price for transfer between the 2 districts is $1,000 for 1 million gallons, then the price, the cost for Soquel Creek and Santa Cruz to produce the water is $500 for 1 million gallons. So that's what we know now. If we can get water out of the ground, it costs us about $500 a million gallons. I looked at Pure Water Soquel, and according to the study that was done last year, which is the old numbers, not the new numbers, not the inflated numbers, the old numbers, the cost to get a gallon, to get 1 million gallons of water out of Pure Water Soquel is $10,400. So my suggestion here is, since we know Santa Cruz has the water, we've still got some permit things to deal with, but we got enough water to play with here. You know, we can make water for $500 for 1 million gallons. We got to get the politics right. And that's what we need to go to work on. Santa Cruz, I'm going to tell you, is going to stick you for that water. They want a $100 million water treatment plant upgrade, and they think that you guys are going to have to pay for it. And I will say that again in front of the Santa Cruz Water Commission at their next meeting. But we in Santa Cruz who want this to happen on a regional basis are going to battle that. And I think, since we've had some success battling them so far, so that now we realize we've got all this North Coast water that 2 years ago they said you couldn't have, I think we'll have some success. So what I want, Dr. Daniels, Dr. Bruce Jaffe, Gary Lindstrom, I want us to come forward in a forward direction. We can't do anything about the 3 years it's taken to get to where we can transfer water, but we can go forward. And I think we'll find there's a lot of water that we can use. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Would either of the candidates like to respond to Mr. McGilvery's comments?
No, I'm fine. I agree. I totally agree. I just think that we need to work together and stop the bickering and the fighting over the water. We all need to share it, and it's all one county, so.
Yeah, I agree with you. We should work together. That I think the Mid-County Groundwater Agency is a good forum for that. It can happen outside of that as well. I was the first chair of the Mid-County Groundwater Agency, and I'm on the Mid-County Groundwater Agency's Sustainable Groundwater Plan Advisory Committee, and that's where all this is going to be worked out. This is how we can all play well together. And the indications are just like Scott said, that the plans are for if there is a larger scale river transfer, for the cost to be quite a bit more than that. I was multiplying by a factor of 100, 1,000 before, but yeah, it's $1,000 per million gallons is the current agreement, and the indications are it could be many times that, and so.
Okay.
Well, no, that's the indications.
That's what you hear.
Yeah, and yeah, well, so there's 218. So the way where you can't charge one person one price for water and another person another price for water unless there's a reason for it. So if we're working together and there's water coming back to Santa Cruz, that could be a reason for it. And also, Gary, I agree with you that enlarging pipes is a possibility, and it too is pricey, but not as pricey. And your idea of coffees, on the Saturdays, that's a good idea. As a matter of fact, we currently do have coffees, not as regularly as you're talking about it, but the President, Bruce Daniels, has initiated that, and it's like you say, it's an opportunity for real conversation. One of the frustrations with the meetings, I'm sure from the public side, and certainly from the director's side as well, is that there's a lot on the plate there, and there's interaction with the public, but it's not as much interaction as can happen with the coffees or other things like this.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now go to the next card that I got, and I'm taking this as I received them. In the event of a long-standing drought, when Santa Cruz City will not have the surplus to transfer, what will Soquel Creek Water do as the pumping demands continue to deplete the aquifer? I think, Bruce, it's your turn first.
Yeah. So when we were talking about desalination, somebody had a meeting, and that's in my mind a very unlikely scenario, but still on the table, because you have to be open to whatever it takes to protect the environment. And although there's an energy cost with it, there's also benefits to any water supply that allows more flow through the streams. But I don't support that at all, really. Last resort. Somebody talked about seawater intrusion being like a runaway train heading your way. You know it's coming, but you don't know when it's going to get there. And you know it's not going to be good once it gets there. Well, we've actually found out that runaway train is right at the coast. The Soquel Creek Water District initiated it, and the Mid-County Groundwater Agency participated and took it on. One of the first in the world, if not the first, study looking for where seawater intrusion, where the seawater is in the aquifer offshore of the of the coast. And you might have seen a helicopter flying over. Yeah, so it was over the ocean, going back and forth and back and forth. So it had this instrument that was able to measure, not only, it was able to measure beneath the seawater into the aquifer below, whether or not there was salt, whether there was the resistivity. So if it's low resistivity, that's can be an indication of salt water, and if it's high resistivity, it's fresh water. And it found out that it's right at the coast in some of our layers in our aquifer where we pump. So it is, it is something that we need to pay attention to, and something that we need to deal with as quickly as possible. Because right now, seawater intrusion is in the wells areas. They have to shut down a well there. And then in the Pajaro Valley it's many kilometers inland, miles inland. In Salinas, I think it's 8 miles inland now at this point. But we even have it in the La Selva Beach area in a couple of our wells. I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you. Karen, do you want the question repeated?
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, the saltwater intrusion is a big problem. And again, I go back to, let's get the water flowing. It's not going to take us another 4 or 5 years to get this water moving through the county. And it won't take us another 4 or 5 years to team up with Central Water District to take whatever water they can afford to hand over. And I just know in my heart that we can solve this problem without getting ourselves into a financial bind. Because if we're going to enlarge these pipes, all we have to do is enlarge them by 1 foot, go from a 2-foot pipe to a 3-foot pipe, and that allows us to double the volume. So it's, we found out that I believe the factories are in Alabama or somewhere back there anyway. And some of the cost has been worked out already as to how much it'll cost to even get the piping out here. So, and it's been studied, there's been models done during the drought years and things like that. And we don't want to see anything happen to the fish and wildlife. We had the state Fish and Wildlife Department look the plans over, and they were totally in agreement with it. They said it was fine, it wouldn't hurt anybody. And we're not out to harm, Mother Nature. I mean, it's just a matter of not letting that water go that we can use. So I'm like, again, I'll just go back to the thing is just spend what we can spend without getting into financial binds, and replace pipe and replace pumps, whatever we need to do just to get the system going. Because let's say, for instance, we don't go into another drought for 20 years. Well, then, my God, we can get that aquifer completely filled and not have to worry so much about droughts. And when you take that pressure off of everyone, thinking that, oh, my garden's going to be gone again, or this, or that, or the other, everybody wants to take a little bit longer shower. And everybody wants to put a little more water in their garden and stuff. But everybody's been just phenomenal about respecting the fact that we are short of water. And I just want to get it flowing, get it going, and enlarge it as quickly as possible so that we don't have to fall back onto a $100 or $200 million project. So.
Thank you. I want to give you each some water.
No, thank you. I did almost finish.
No charge. I don't know if I can reach them. I don't know if I can drink it in good conscience.
I'd like to ask about a question from the audience in the back row. Randa?
Yeah, I just want to say something about the Mid-County Groundwater Agency that Dr. Jeffy is on. It's the advisory agency to the Mid-County Groundwater Association, or Alliance, I'm not sure what that A is. I went to that meeting last month, and I feel like the 20 of us or so that are in this room, if we each wrote to them and pressured them to start, to help make the transfer start as soon as possible, that would make a big difference. I gave my little 2-minute public talk, asking that. And then they went on to a lot of other technical business. It was very interesting, but also it's clear that they're not getting the public pressure that they need to enlarge the pipes and get the transfer going as soon as they can, and possibly even, I don't know what, the current board thinks about that idea about backing up to 3 years or giving us another 5 years span to start this. But if everybody here went onto that website, Mid-County Groundwater Association or the advisory board, or wrote to Bruce and said, please give us in, I think it would make a difference to them. They seem like they might respond to that.
And I will just say that there is a meeting this Wednesday night of the advisory committee for the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. That meeting will be Wednesday at 5 o'clock, from 5 to 8:30 at the Simpkins Swim Center, and you are welcome to go there. Whenever you see the little signs with a blue logo and a tree around in the area, that is a notification for something to do with the Mid-County Groundwater Agency. The advisory committee meets every month. The main board meets every other month.
And
So-
my experience is you don't have to stay for the 3-hour technical meeting. You can
Right.
say they do public comments right up front. You can say your 2-minute piece, stay for a few minutes, and then go. It's easy enough.
So I'd like to give our candidates an opportunity to respond to what you said.
Well, okay. And that wasn't really a question.
Just to respond.
No, it was just a statement. That's right.
I think if you come for the public comment, you have to stay at least an hour into the meeting.
Say an hour, that young woman scientist who was presenting was really phenomenal. I really know a lot about it. Then I thought, after that, I was like, wait.
I'm just joking. Yeah, please do come. John's a member, yeah.
So, and they're talking about updating the minutes and putting the bullet points in and stuff to make it quicker so that people can get up to date with what happened at the last meeting, what's going to happen in the next meeting, where they're reaching. So it should be a lot easier to understand in the future, because unless you're at the meetings once in a while, it's pretty area.
Well, it's all about the modeling.
Right, you're right.
Yeah,
Right.
getting nitty-gritty. I will say that it is the best recording system that I've ever experienced in terms of going online, and the mic is phenomenal because you can truly hear everybody talking.
The meetings are audio recorded, and you can find them all on the Mid-County Groundwater Agency website. Thank you. I'd like to move ahead now to another question card submitted from the audience. Again, I'm taking them in the order to which I received them. How long will the Santa Cruz solution work at present with leaking water? Groundwater recharge, is that still necessary? Pajaro River water or Valencia Creek? Oh my gosh, these are 3 questions, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I broke that because as I sit here, there's more and more questions
Yes.
that keep popping up.
Do you want me to start with number 1? Because I start with
Cancel that
number 3.
one. And the bottom line, I guess, at the current moment is what's the North Coast water solution? Or I don't have the exact words. Yeah, North Coast water, what is that? I mean, we've been talking this water.
That's all the creeks and streams north of Santa Cruz proper.
Yeah, okay.
Waddell Creek, Waddell, Scott, and so on. And again, what we want to do is harvest the water during the rainy season, okay? And if the season extends itself longer, then we can harvest water longer. If it starts sooner, we can start harvesting it sooner. If it's later, then we have to wait. We don't want to harm the fish and wildlife, and we definitely don't want to dry up the streams and creeks. But with all the data that's been brought forward in the models and stuff, there's really no problem with it. It's all doable. It's just we just don't know exactly how much, and that's what we need to find out. And that's why I'd like to put it on a fast track and do what's necessary to transfer as much water as possible and make sure that it's working properly, and then expand it. And we don't even have to expand it all at once. It's nice to be able to go into a project where each year you can say, okay, well, let's spend $15, $20 million on replacing pipe. And then, take it from one place to the next stop, to the pump station or whatever, and make sure that it works, And it's just, I just don't want to see us get into a bind where the water has to keep going up and up and up, because there's another rate increase scheduled for March, and then they've been talking about one every year in January for the next 5 years. So, with that last one at 17.5%, which was like 4 times the cost of living increase, it's tough. I mean, there's people that can't afford that extra $45 a month. And, there's other issues that I would like to see in the rate system. It's just difficult. I know that we have to have the money, but I just don't think that it has to be as high as it is. I think that we can conserve on the operations of the district and not have to go through so many increases, especially if we don't do the pure water plan.
Thank you. The question was about the North Coast streams.
Yes,
And I do want to ask your second question, if it's all right, to just follow up after Bruce addresses your North Coast stream question.
Okay, I won't have to take 3 minutes. So Gary's right. Liddell's not included, but it's Liddell, Majors, and Laguna. And right now, they're not taking water out of Laguna. It's roughly a third of Santa Cruz's water portfolio. So in the pilot study agreement, there's limitations on how much water can be delivered to the Soquel Creek Water District, and it's based on what's reported to the state of California that comes from the North Coast to Santa Cruz. So it's kind of, there are limitations. The actual molecules of water from the North Coast, they're going to be transferred. There'll be some molecules transferred, but it's going to be transferred from all of the sources from Santa Cruz. It's just a bookkeeping thing. So.
Thank you. So I do, because I goofed up. And your second question, I think, really speaks to what one of the speakers talked about here, and is a pertinent question. How do you plan to cut Soquel Creek Water District budget to bring it back into line with the current mandated lowest tier expansions? Bruce, I think we'll go with you first.
Okay. The current mandated lowest tier expansions. So you're talking about how tier 2 is no longer...
Right, and
Yeah.
tier 1, the lower tier has been expanded up.
Right, and that was a legal decision, and so the question is, how do we keep that going and keep the water costs low? Is that basically...
Do you want to explain? Because maybe not everybody's aware of what happened.
So there has to be a nexus between the cost for the water and what's charged for the water. And the way Soquel Creek Water District has done this is saying for lower amounts of water, we don't have to do as much. We don't have to use some of the sources. And then for greater amounts of water use, we have to tap into some sources that cost more because we have to clean them up more, et cetera. And so what happened was that when we did the Prop 218, which is what's required for setting rates, we had planned on cleaning up the water in some of the wells that have chromium 6 in them. And all in favor of it. We want to get as clean as possible. And what happened is that because of the changing landscape, we did not do those projects to save money, actually, because what we were going to do is going to cost more money, and there's new process that costs less money. So we didn't do that. And there was a lawsuit that was really more about fire meters, but that was part of it. And the judge said that you can't charge tier 2, so we're not doing that. Now, we're currently looking at future rates. There's a finance committee. You're welcome to attend it. It's public. At the last meeting, or the meeting before, it was, the way the board was going was to 2 tiers. But how you divide it up, again, 90+% of the cost is for this aging water system and recoating tanks, and so, you know, you can only cut so much. And then the issue with, I'm very sensitive, you know, sensitized to the issue that $45 or whatever it turns out to be is, you know, a lot of money to some people in the district. So that we're looking into ways to have programs that could help with that. And right now, this is being looked at a state level as well. It's not just in our district, it's all around. That's it.
Would you like a little more time? Because I asked you to explain the issue.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with everything that Bruce said, but I do want to see a system where people that are financially struggling can get some help with their bills and stuff. Because there's a lot of seniors, and there's people on different systems of welfare or whatever. And the increase in rates and stuff does affect them a great deal. So I would just say, just go to PG&E. They have a plan. So does AT&T. And once they get on a program like, it's called the CARE program with PG&E, they are given a break every month. Depends on your bill, but it's a percentage. And it helps lower the bill a little bit. But with that, they should also be learning about water and how the water system is working and stuff, and how important it is for them to conserve also. So I just think that if there's a person that is in the CARE program already with PG&E, that we could work something to where people would get a slight discount on their water bill. And that's about it, because everything else he said is the same thing I would say.
All right, thank you. Let's see, there was a lady in the back row. Yes, you were next. And then Mr. Kennedy will take you the next time we have a stand.
Well, you brushed up against this problem, this issue a number of times from questions and answers, but does it ever seem to you like the elephant in the room is limits to growth? And I know we have a real problem with housing here, but I mean, do you coordinate or collaborate with other boards and planning commissions or whatever to say, hey, wait, can we do this thing? You know, I know places like Bolinas and Santa Catalina Island, they just said no more hookups. That's just it. I'm sorry, there's more water available. And I just wonder if that's ever a consideration.
I'll let you take care of that.
No, you get
Can you please restate the question for the audience?
Oh, okay.
So we're all...
Okay. Basically, is whether or not the water department's tied in with other departments in controlling the growth rate. And actually, that's what got me in this position. I was working with others on the Aptos Village project, and at that time, knowing that we were in a critical water shortage, I couldn't understand why they were allowing that project to go on. And there's other political things, believe me, that are involved in it. But the water thing was just it amazed me that the water district basically had the power to stop it if they wanted to. And I just think it's time for the departments, whether it's the water department, sewage, anything, if there's a problem and it's not fixed yet, then there's just no more expansion of this stuff. We're landlocked. Okay? So not only do we not have the space, there is only so much space between the mountains and the ocean. So there's no more space for highways and all this stuff. They can expand it to 6 lanes. But that's even that, if they keep expanding with this high density growth, it's not going to handle it. Okay? So it comes down to a common sense fact. There's no way to expand right now other than sustainable growth. And when you have that kind of growth, then you go in and you take neighborhoods, and instead of tearing down all the old buildings and stuff like that, if there's some that need refurbishing and some, you take care of it. Or if somebody wants to build a home or something like that, then they go in and buy the older properties and upgrade things. But going in and putting in these huge things like Aptos Village Project is out of control. It has destroyed the quality of the village, and it's put a big tax on the water system. They supposedly did their water demand offsets, but nobody has a record of it. Swenson doesn't have a record of it, the district doesn't have a record of it, the janitors don't even have a record of it up at Cabrillo. So, you know, I'm all for all the water demand offsets. I'm for doing anything we can do to conserve water and make sure that we can progress at a normal pace. But this stuff of developers coming in and just thinking that we can blow this stuff out of proportion, we're going to get ourselves into water situations that we will never be able to get out of. The pure water will never take care of it, neither will the desal. So we've really got to be conservative on this growth and let people know that there's only so much we can do, you know, until we figure out flying cars or something, because the roads are just not going to handle it, and the water isn't either. So.
Thank you. Bruce?
So there are several parts to that question, I think. So let me see if I've got this right. So one part is whether we're working with other agencies about whether or not the planned growth and the amount of water makes sense. You know, remind me, the other part was about whether we've considered just stopping it all.
Yeah, is there a point? I mean,
Is there a point?
Is there an animal?
Right, so you're talking about a moratorium on new hookups?
I don't know, I'm just wondering where you guys are standing on it. You know, I mean, it's so clear that there's so many issues, so many housing issues right now.
Right, right.
Trying to integrate with the things you're saying,
Right.
it's like scary.
So first, are we working with other agencies on it? Yes. Could we work more with other agencies on it? Yes. When I first came on the board, there was a bigger disconnect, and there still is a disconnect. But it's getting closer. In terms of, so Gary was talking about water demand offset. So this is something that it's kind of a Band-Aid, but it works for a while, where you require, if there's a new demand of water, that you require an offset, water in that demand through retrofits or new sources in terms of recharge projects or replacing inefficient fixtures. And so that's currently what the program is. So with that, for a period of time until those would happen naturally, we basically have kicked the can down the street in terms of the impact on the water. Now, the future, you know, can't predict that, but we needed supplemental water supply to get the water levels up so we keep the seawater where it's supposed to be, in the sea and not in an aquifer. And sure, there's scenarios where if the demand just skyrocketed, where I don't think that could happen. So that would you know, require action by whoever's on the board to protect the resource. But we're not at that place now, in my opinion. No, thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm at my last question card, so if you have a question that has not yet been asked and you want to put it on a card or stand up, and John Kennedy there on the side will be the next person I call upon. Please write it down. We have more cards here if you'd like, and pens. So this one will go first to Bruce. Why do ratepayers living in multifamily dwellings pay only roughly half the service fee as paid by persons living in single-family homes? What defines a multifamily dwelling? There are homes that were formerly single-family but now occupied by 2 or more families. Bed and breakfast units required to have separate service fee? Would you like to address this? This is a question from the audience.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the multifamily definition, we do have different rates, and the logic behind it is that there's not irrigation, so the tiers are different because the irrigation is shared. So the question of why isn't it the same? That's the reason why. We still have, in my opinion, inequities that we need to resolve. One of them is there are these big meters that serve lots of people, and there's no real feedback on your water use and how much and the cost, because you're just charged a set amount. And so that I'm open to suggestions on how to solve that, but right now I don't have a solution for that. I don't know if Gary does or not.
Thank you. Gary, do you want to respond to the question? Want to read it again?
No. I don't really know everything on the infrastructure of the rates and everything. So all I can say is I know that it does need restructuring and that they are working on it. I just want to see it fair, that's all. And I want to see it kept as low as possible. So with things like an audit of the company to see where we might be wasting money, it could be on the trucks that we buy. It could be on how often we buy them. It could be on bonuses. It could be on any number of things that I don't know about because I'm not privileged to that information yet. But it's just, I just think that we can really work harder at bringing the rates down. And if I remember right, there was a rate increase, a temporary rate increase. I don't want to misquote anything. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it just seemed to me when I read about it is that we were beyond that point. So I'm sorry for that. I'll try to read it again. I just can't remember. I've been going over so many papers and information and stuff. But if a rate increase has done its job, then it's time to get rid of it. That's about it. I just want to see everybody get more involved with the company. I want to see people in the seats, in the meetings and stuff like that. I want you to know that your opinion is valuable, and I definitely would appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else would. And I think the structure of the meetings need to change a little bit. There's no interaction allowed through conversation in the meetings. And the other boards that I go to allow it. So I think there would be a lot less frustration with ratepayers if they could get answers and talk directly to the board and stuff. It might make the meetings a little bit longer, but I just think that there's certain things that could be talked about right there at the meeting and resolved, rather than making somebody go back to the office on Monday or Wednesday or whatever and try to solve the problem. Because then you're introducing a whole nother person that knows nothing about what was discussed at the meeting. And I just, my whole philosophy on business, when somebody would come in with a problem, first words out of my mouth was, okay, well, let's see how we can take care of this. I know we can take care of this problem. And so that's what I'd like to see more of, is, that and the rates staying down.
Thank you. I'd like to now take the question from the floor from Mr. Kennedy.
So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that was passed by the state a couple of years ago requires us in this area to submit a plan to the state by January of 2020, which may seem like a long time away to you all, but it's like around the corner. In effect, the agency, the advisory agency, which is really helping to set up the policy issues around that plan, has to pretty much get that ready by next summer. That's not very much time for all the complexity that goes into that. And it requires, just by the way, that act also requires that the groundwater management agencies like we are interact with the planning department of the county. But it doesn't give us control over what the county planning department decides to do. And there's a whole history to all that, but we were trying. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, given the fact that we have to submit this plan and that Soquel district is about 65% of the usage of the mid-county groundwater aquifer, and given that we have to put the plan in place to start with right away, and it has to say what we're going to do for at least 20 years plus. We can gradually adjust it, but we can't say, we'll deal with this if it shows up later. We got to say what we're going to do now. And I think what I've heard Ron Duncan say is that the projection for Soquel Creek, I think, is needing an additional 1,300 to 1,500 acre feet over what we've got now. And that's quite a bit in addition to what is possible right now from river transfer. So what do you suggest is the solution that Soquel Creek has to participate in this groundwater sustainability plan and put into the state now? Here's what we're going to do to address not only what it is now, but the planning horizon for really 40 or 50 years in the future. And we have to put that something to start with now that will address and make up for at least 1,300 to 1,500 acre feet just for Soquel Creek, and maybe more than that, because then you have to look at down the line a little bit. So that's the question.
Okay, so I'm not sure what your question is.
What do they suggest that Soquel Creek do now as part of that plan to make up for that shortage in the water?
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Gary?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that sustainable growth is probably the top priority. It doesn't have to be a complete moratorium, but I just think that there are solutions to the growth, and that with that, we can eliminate some of that extra water that you're talking about. If the water is just not there, it's not there. And if it's not there at an affordable price, it's not there. Because people, I've talked to so many people the last month that they're saying, I'm just scared that my water bill is going to be the same as my mortgage payment. And I keep thinking about that. And, I have friends over in the valley, over in San Jose and stuff, and their water bills for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house are like $400 and $500 a month. And it just boggles my mind, and I just know it doesn't have to be that way, especially here in Santa Cruz, because the great thing about Santa Cruz is that we are so unique in this state, and that we are very, very environmentally concerned about things. We're also very good at figuring out how to take care of problems. There's millions of issues that we need to deal with, but you need to get back to the things that human beings need to live. And again, that's air, water, and food. Fortunately, we're in an agricultural place where we've got the best produce probably anywhere in the world. We've got still relatively clean air. We've lost a little bit of our standings because of the backup through Branson 40 now on the highway, instead of it being up on 17 where it used to be, when the trees would filter out all that. So the air thing is, there's a little problem there, but we can take care of that even. So it just, the water has got to be up front and a deciding factor now in the growth. And there's just no way that the developers can be let loose to come in and just say, oh, well, we want to do this and this and this and this. And they start doing projects behind closed doors, and they don't get involved with the water districts and companies. And it's wrong. It's just wrong. So I just think that the growth has got to be looked at, and the zoning has got to change back to a sustainable growth pattern. That's all.
Thank you. Bruce?
I wish I could address zoning and things like that, but that's not the job of the Soquel Creek Water District. It's to, in my opinion, ensure that in the future there's water, clean, safe water. So, John, your question, it's a tough one. The timing forces us to do something. And the state is not going to accept we might have a plan in 5 years or 3 years or whatever the time frame is. So I think you just have to come up with a plan that is the best you can do at the time, and you try and write it in a way such that you can change it as you get more information. If river water, maybe you come up with a hybrid plan, and there will be decision points, and it really depends on what the lay of the land is at those decision points. But you have to do something. I agree. You can't put it off. It has to happen, and that's not being mandated by us. That's being mandated by the state. And as you know, if our ground sustainability plan is not good, the state comes in and takes over. And we don't want that to happen, because who knows what their priorities and value system are. So it's a tough question. Scott might have the answer.
Thank you. I have a card. Do you have a brief comment, Mr. McGovern?
I have the answer to the question.
Would you like
Good. I'll write it down.
Candidates, are you all right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Mr. McGovern, do you want to state the answer to their question?
Sure.
If you could stand, Scott, that would help.
Yeah.
Let's keep it brief if we can.
I think what John asked was 1,300 to 1,500 acre feet per year.
Just for
Soquel Creek. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is convert that to hundreds of millions of gallons. And that's 500 million gallons. 1,500 acre feet is 500 million gallons. Because you divide by 3 and multiply by a couple of zeros. So we're looking at 500 million gallons. 500 million gallons, there's not just one way to solve that this year. There are at least two. The first way is to go look at Loch Lomond today. It's 88% full. The Santa Cruz water plan they put together every April to get through the year projected that it would be 70% full at this point in time. So the difference between 88% and 70%, which would have been good enough, is 18%. Since the reservoir holds 3 billion gallons, you get 30 million gallons for every 1%. So there's 540 million gallons that the city didn't plan on having in Loch Lomond that's sitting there right now. If that water could have been moved to Soquel Creek over the course of the year, it would have been limited by at least an infrastructure factor, which is 1.4 million gallons a day. 1.4 million gallons a day times 350 days is 540 million gallons. So the water is there. This is also a very dry year. It's one of the driest years we've had. And Water for Santa Cruz looked at the amount of water that flowed out the San Lorenzo River during the months of March and April when it rained so heavily, and took the fish requirements out and water that would have been taken out by the city and so on. And there was another 800 million gallons that flowed out between March the 1st and April the 30th. And the city of Santa Cruz, which has the rights to the water, had no place to put the water because they already had Loch Lomond filled to 97% from last year. Loch Lomond filled, overflowing without having pumped 1 gallon out of the San Lorenzo River this year. Now, we've studied this for 80 years. We've studied 2017, which was a very wet year. We studied 2018, which was a very dry year. Last time we looked at it, we said, fine, let's take an average year. And when you take an average year, you've got somewhere between 500 and a billion gallons, 500 million, a billion gallons that we have in the system that we can move around right now. Now, we can't move the water that's from the San Lorenzo River because we don't have a permit, but we can move all the water from North Coast anywhere we want. And that is in excess of 500 million gallons a year. Now, if you did this for 4 years, you'd have 2 billion gallons sitting there. We can't get a drop of water out of pure water Soquel, no matter how hard we try, in less time than that. Now, I really can't predict the future. I've looked at what happens with the trends and the water flows. I'm confident that the water is there, by and large. But we're never going to get anywhere if we don't start that 1.4 million gallon a day spigot moving and take as much as we possibly can. I think if we go to the State Water Resources Control Board and say, well, we don't know how to do this, but we're going to build a pure water Soquel plant, that probably will fly. Oh, well, you're going to spend money, you're going to build a plant, the engineers guarantee it. I think we're a little smart at that. We can move, at the very least, between January. We've already lost November, so we can't move the 21 million gallons that's in the North Coast in November that could go to Soquel Creek, because Soquel Creek isn't ready. But we can start in December, and if it's just like last year, the demand in Soquel Creek in December was 28 million gallons. So there's 28 between November the 30th and May the 30th. That's 240 million gallons that can come to Soquel Creek. That's not a trifling amount of water. It's 2.5 times the 100 million gallons that the pilot program has to say. Which is why we at Water for Santa Cruz want people to just open up their minds and open up the spigot and let's see what happens. No guarantees, but you can't say it's not worth trying. You can't say it's not worth trying with a great deal of vigor and urgency. The economics, time, availability of water, cost, energy, they're all lined up just like ducks in a row. So we ought to try it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Santa Cruz City are the people that have that control.
They want to agree
does.
and say they're ready to do
I want
that.
to keep the flow going because
That's
we're
the
approaching. And I have one card, and then I see there's one end of the audience.
I'd like to respond to that.
Oh, of course. Can we say 2 minutes? Is that okay?
No, just, so the questions I have, Scott, there's 3 questions.
Yep.
And we could talk offline about that. But one question is, can Soquel Creek take that amount of water and use it? Is the timing going to be right?
Right.
So that is one question. Another question is, have you run your numbers for future climate scenarios with multi-year droughts to see whether or not that works? And then the final question, and again, take it offline, is what does Santa Cruz want in return for doing this? So those are the questions. There's not
2 of the 3 right now. Well, one can't. But I don't know if
I
this
want
is
to
what
keep
you
things
want.
moving to give people in the audience a bit of time to.
those are the things we need to talk about.
I agree.
Gary, do you want to respond?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Let's just
All right, thank you. I have a card, and then we have a gentleman here, and then it will be time for us to close up for the evening, and I really want to thank you all. And closing speeches, 2 minutes, yes, thank you. The word is, Soquel Creek Water District staff wants the recharge system so that if they move to another water company or another position, if they work on a multi-million-dollar project, it looks good on their resume versus inexpensive systems such as transfer. Do you think that staff is focusing enough on affordability for the ratepayers? And I've lost track who. Gary. Gary, please.
Okay. Now, I'm trying to, just the last part of it, the last sentence?
Do you feel staff is focusing enough on affordability of rate, for the ratepayers?
No.
Bruce?
Do I feel like they are? Staff's directed by the directors, so if they're not focused on that, the blame goes to the directors, not to the staff. The directors tend to value water quality and being more sure about the future water supply. And so I would say that the directors aren't focused enough on affordability if you think the staff isn't focused enough on affordability. But one thing that I'll say is that we are looking at grants that could cover a significant proportion if in fact we do proceed with water recycling. So that's one thing that the directors have the foresight to there's a timetable, just like there's a timetable for the Maryland Sustainability Plan, there's a timetable for the grants. So the district is focused on affordability and applying for those grants. Might never use them, might not get them, but those are.
All right, thank you.
I live in a small lot in Seacliff, and I have a question about something I don't really know much about, which is the agricultural use of water in our district. What percentage is used by agriculture, and how is that affecting this whole picture that we're talking about?
You want to answer that?
You want to restate the question?
Yeah, I don't know the figures on that, but are you talking about the whole district, or are you talking just about Seacliff?
So, no, I'm talking about Soquel
Creek. Okay, yeah, I don't have the figures on that right now.
Bruce Daniels has it on the tip of his tongue, and let him give them, but it's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
Bruce, is it?
Zero.
Zero.
Zero? So
that's small.
Small.
Yeah. Pajaro, the district to the south of us, it's quite large because of strawberry farming, but here it's not.
But they also do dip a little bit into the same aquifer, right?
There's connections.
Yeah.
All right, I want to give anybody one more chance for a question. Yes.
I'd just like to say I really appreciate some of your outreach, and I live in a small modular home park, and we're trying to replace everybody using 1.8 gallons per flush, and it's harder than you think. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer, but people go, oh, my brother-in-law is a contractor, and he says I'm at 1.6, and it doesn't really make that much difference, but the collective, we can save a lot, but it's like we really need a strong publicity campaign or something, but I really admire what you've done with the trailer to the schools, and it seems like every day I'm reading about something, you're having a chat and meet with some coffee shop, and I really appreciate that.
Do either of you want to respond to that?
Thank you. And there have been many awards given to the district for that type of thing.
All right. All right, with that, I would like to give each candidate 2 minutes to give your closing speech. And I'll go first to Bruce.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of topics here. I appreciate everyone for being here and for, I think more of these discussions we have, the better. The goal that I have is it's pure. It's not it's to make sure that the aquifer is sustainable into the future. any way possible. Totally open to river transfers, take them as much as they're given, as long as everything's safe, and it appears to be that way. Carla Christensen is the same way. Rochelle Lather, the same way. River transfers, it's a no-brainer. But will it get us there? I'm not sure of that. So, Scott has talked about some ways it could get us there, and I've met with Scott at coffee shops, I met with Becky at coffee shops, and I'm open to all these solutions. I'm not closed-minded. So, it's a real key time right now because of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. This is forcing us to work together more than we have in the past. We already started that, but it's forcing us to work together more. So I just am hopeful in this before the middle of next summer that things gel together there, and the direction we go is that we all work together more rather than fighting over the water. That's it.
Thank you. Gary?
Well, first, I'd like to say I would appreciate your vote on the 6th of November. Again, I'll go back to the main thing, is that I want to get the water flowing immediately. And I know... Anyway, I know that the transfers will help, and I think that we just need to put 100% into it right now to find out what it's capable of doing. If it is the answer, hallelujah. If it's not, then let's work on something else. I want every single ratepayer in the district to start thinking about how we can help the aquifer recharge. There's got to be some great ideas out there. One that I was thinking about was talking to some of the large landowners that have wells and stuff like that. Hey, maybe we can help them put in a perk pond on their property. We've got the engineers, we've got the equipment. Maybe we can share the cost or give them a break somehow or whatever. But I just think that there's a lot of ideas out there. If we just think outside the box and get busy at making it the aquifer sustainable. Because once we've got that water in there, there's enough in there to share with everybody. And I think that's what we need to work towards, is this cooperation between each other. Because if Santa Cruz gets into a situation, let's say they have a catastrophic main problem break or something, and they need water right away. Well, if that aquifer's got water in it enough, then we can transfer it right back to them. If, somebody else in the county needs water and we've got it, that's part of the answer. So getting that aquifer filled ASAP is the biggest thing, and I just don't think at this time we need to spend that large amount of money for pure water supply.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank both candidates, Bruce and Gary, for participating. I would also like to thank the Santa Cruz chapter of the Sierra Club and Ron Pomerantz for their sponsor, and Randa Solid from the National League for Peace and Freedom, and the Santa Cruz Public Library for providing this space. I want